Hello everyone and welcome back to Always Watching. For those of you new to my channel, I review all things movie and TV. So if you like what you hear, subscribe, share, and comment down below. So Succession is back, our favorite satire about terrible people. And I'm so sad and also happy that it's the final season. So every season so far has felt like it could have been the last. So I'm very confident that they have an ending plan and it's going to be a good one. You know, we're not going to get sopranoed. It's going to be a good season. We last left the Roy family in total shambles. Logan won, it seemed. Like, I remember thinking that season, like, it could have just ended here and it would have been a fantastic ending. And at first it seems like Shiv, Kendall, Roman, they've kind of teamed together. They've gone their separate ways. And I think their time in Italy together and Kendall's confession, it kind of bonded them. They have this like respect for one another. They're so deeply insecure that it's only a matter of time before, you know, memory loss occurs and they kind of forget everything that happened that brought them together. We meet the kids, quote unquote, working together to set up their own legacy, the 100. And this is supposed to be the pinnacle of media, independent media, the one-stop info shop. Like, the things coming out of Kendall's mouth, I was like, shut up. Like, he has no idea what he's talking about. And they've been working hard to secure investors. They've been working on branding. They've been doing all these interesting things. And I love how Kendall was like, it's going to be Masterclass meets New York Times meets this and that. And you could just tell they have no idea what they're talking about. Like, at no point in time were they discussing the news. Like, they were just talking points. Like, we're going to cover AI, Israel, Palestine. Like, they were just saying things. But you could tell these guys have never picked up a newspaper like Masterclass. Like, do you know what a Masterclass is? Like, I was just like, damn, like, they've been really finding a way to kill time. First, it seems like they're content, they're all together, they seem happy, but because they're so power hungry and they're so insecure, nothing will ever be enough, right? Like, their outfits, they weren't looking as fresh as we remember them to be. So I've divided my video into two parts. I'll talk about Kendall and gang, and then I'll talk about Logan, Tom, and Greg's raggedy behind. Like, Greg is something else. He's my favorite and also least favorite character. Like, I've enjoyed watching him be cringe at this point, and I appreciated how this episode was shot. Like, especially like during that negotiation scene. So Logan is in this dark room. His minions, he's surrounded by these men in like black suits. It's so intense. It feels so formal. You know, they're negotiating a deal that they don't really need. But Logan, I think, wants to satisfy his ego. I'm not really sure why he wants this deal. Is it because he wants to just buy it and run it into the ground? Or is it because he wants to, like, he still has it in his mind that he's going to revive ATN and he's going to somehow, you know, bring revive his legacy from the dead, right? Like, I think he's obsessed with that. And from what I remember, Logan was going to sell his company. And I guess that's still a thing as far as I know. And we get a small conversation with one of Logan's associates about, like, you need to call Mattson back about this deal. And so I was thinking, is this deal a sure thing? You know, I don't know. Logan's hubris is that he wants to live forever, but he can't. Right? And he also kind of doesn't want to be forgotten and erased, which is what's going to happen if he sells his company. And I like the contrast between Logan's family and the Pierce family. They're like the opposite of the Roy family, right? They're educated, they're calm, they're serene. They have this light, beautiful home. Everyone is so well dressed, you know. They're negotiating, but it feels like a community. It feels like everyone in the family is involved. Whereas on Logan's team, they're all walking on eggshells. They're all terrified. The thing about the Pierce family is that they know they're kind of selling their company on their own terms. Like, they know it's done, right? Like, the family's kind of done. They all want to move on. They all want to live their lives. And so they kind of come to this consensus, like, well, might as well sell it and might as well sell it for the highest bidder. And maybe while we're at it, tear down this raggedy family, this trash-ass Roy family. And starting with Shiv, so we'll start with Kendall and gang. So Shiv is disheveled. She's basically suffering from a separation and now possible divorce from her husband, Tom. And it seems like she's not 100% confident in everything. Like, the minute we meet her, she seems scatterbrained. She seems like she's here and there. Although they've all been working together on the 100, none of them are very confident in it. You know, like she's taking meetings with politicians. She repeatedly says how she needs to secure her own future. So she's not really with them in the headspace. And I think the reason that she's not really with them in this headspace is because she's like mentally preparing for this divorce. Like she kind of knows something is coming. And I was also thinking like Tom is such an interesting character because now that he's separated from Shiv, he's worried, right? He's trying desperately to please Logan. He's trying desperately. But what he doesn't realize is Shiv's actions with Kendall and Roman, like he's now actually higher than Shiv in the hierarchy, right? Like he always married into Shiv's family, but his fear is like, what if I lose everything with this divorce? But the way things went down, Tom might not realize it, but he's more valuable to Logan now than Shiv, right? Like if you notice, Logan keeps saying, you know, contact your wife, not my daughter. And that says something. And the only person who seems genuinely interested in moving on from ATN and Dad is Roman. And I've enjoyed his character arc. You know, he kind of went from being this bratty, racist, almost just unwatchable character to someone who's slightly more watchable. And he's like aware, like he has the ambition to become a good person, but he knows that it's a long road. You know, like he knows he has a long way to go. And out of the two of them, there's no ego. Right, like I think he cares about setting up some type of legacy and doing, you know, starting a business on their own terms. And I don't think he cares that, you know, he knows that he'll never be as great as his dad, but he's okay with whatever they come up with, right? Like he was kind of liking all three of them working together. And so, you know, he was the only one speaking rational, right? And I think he was foreshadowing a lot of the drama that's about to come. 100, this publication was their way of bowing out. They've all given their resignations to Waystar, so none of them are there anymore. And the idea is that once Logan sells the company, you know, they'll have all this money from this, you know, I can't imagine their severance package, plus their trust, plus God knows what, you know, to do whatever they want. You know, they can start their own they can start 100 startups, you know, like they're good, they're Gucci. And then things sort of take a dark turn when Tom calls Shiv. And this separation from Shiv is like messing Tom up. And he's so cute. Like he calls her, he's like, listen, I don't want you to hear this from anyone else, but you might hear some rumors that I'm dating Naomi, but it's not true. It was just a meeting. I just wanted you to know. Like he calls her keeping tabs, you know, like he's leaving the lines of communication open. But Shiv kind of wants those lines to close. I think they're still reeling from Italy. And the way she was talking to him, like, you know, informing me or telling me, like, she didn't really want to hear anything he had to say. But this conversation is what pretty much triggers the rest of the episode. So as soon as Shiv finds out about Naomi, at first she's pissed, right? She's like, did you know that Tom was dating your ex-girlfriend? Like, and then they start thinking about it rationally, like, okay, if it wasn't a date, then why were they meeting? And then it dawns on them that Logan has never left this dream behind, right? He still has this idea of taking this company from this woman and somehow, I think, reviving his own company and regaining some type of legitimacy. And I will never forget Logan running in the rain, you know, with Nan in the car, begging for this deal. Like that stays in that lives in my brain rent free, right? So I think Tom's call is what triggers this. And they're like, wait a minute, he's trying to do what? So once they start finding this information out, Kendall and Shiv, they start to like something comes alive, right? Like they've been kind of neutral. And then suddenly they decide, you know what? Instead of starting from scratch, why don't we just buy the Pierce company? You know, why don't we just do that? And their plan is to buy it for their own egos, right? They want to be seen as legitimate. It's not enough to start some startup that, you know, will have some respect and maybe win some Pulitzers, right? They want to be seen as big dogs in corporate America. And unfortunately, they don't have the time, the patience, or the intelligence to start a business from zero and turn it into anything, right? Like they're just not business savvy like that. Like they're not smart. Like they act so smart, and they you know, they've seen their father work, and to be honest, they've learned nothing. You know, it's like they're really bad at what they do, but they look like they're really good at what they do. And that's their flaw. Right? Like they see themselves as so competent and having all this potential, but as we see later, everybody else around them doesn't see them that way, right? They just see them as kind of delusional And like, are you guys for real? That's the thing with them. Like, they can't commit, they can't build, they can't really do anything, right? So then they're like, you know what? Instead of doing all this and starting from zero, let's just buy this raggedy company. And I was impressed by Roman. You know, he was speaking facts throughout. He said, you know what? Y'all want to undo the work we just did? You know, are we really gonna buy this company just to get, because our feelings are hurt and, you know, Logan doesn't like us anymore? Is that really what we're gonna do? We've done so well. Like, Roman's thinking realistically. He's like, we can have a good life, start our little company, and move on. And, you know, maybe we can be friends with Dad later. Like, he doesn't want to be in competition anymore. It's a bit of a contradiction, right? And that's the thing with Roman. Like, I think he's the only person interested in starting a business from scratch, because he kind of asked them, he's like, you're saying you want to do all these things with media, and you're saying you want to be independent, but at the same time, you want to buy this conglomerate. Like, y'all don't really care about any of this. You just want to satisfy your egos, have a position, and prove to the world that you're worthy. And so the first mistake they make is traveling to see this woman. This is the first mistake they make, you know, and she plays them like toys, right? Like she doesn't take them seriously. So that was the first mistake. And even Roman said it, like, are we really going to go over to this lady like we're her lapdogs? Like, can we not have this conversation on the phone, which is what Logan does, right? Like, why are we going all the way there? For what? You know, like, just to do what? For her to put us in our place? And that's what she does. She puts them in their place. She puts the whole family, in a weird way, in their place. And the fact that she asked to speak to Shiv, playing on some fake womanly connection that they have, I thought was super smart. And the fact that Shiv or Kendall and none of them saw, right? They're like, ooh, she wants to talk to Shiv because she has the best connection with her. But that's not the reason. So this woman, Nan, like this whole Pierce family, they were playing them right from the beginning. First mistake is they get on the plane. The second mistake is as soon as they land, Naomi comes out and she's like, Nan has a headache, which is total BS, right? Like, she doesn't have a headache. And so now they're waiting, and they're so desperate to get their father back that they kind of play along. And that's the thing, like, a good businessman will know when to cut off the conversation. They're so desperate that they stay until the bitter end, to the point where they end up celebrating before it's confirmed. Like, they start waving the football around before they reach the touch line, which is crazy. So, you know, they're like, Nan has a headache, give her 5 minutes. And because they're dogs, they wait outside. The reason that Nan took so long to, like, you know, her headache is to get a bidding war started, right? She wanted to situate herself. They were discussing strategy possibly, and they wanted to get Logan on the phone, right? Like, they wanted to get this tension going so they could get the best offer. So Nan was setting it up perfectly, and it was so obvious to everyone. It was obvious to Tom, it was obvious to Logan, but it wasn't obvious to these three raggedy kids. And so as soon as they enter the house, Nan just disrespects them right away, right? She's like, I'm so sorry I called you all the way down here. We have a preferred bidder. You know, so sorry. Like, I think we're gonna go with this offer over here. We didn't mean to, like, waste your time. We can offer you some wine. And she throws some shade, right? She's like, you know, for me, you know, I have cheap taste. You know, none of these wines really hit it for me. You know, she basically calls them out. She's like, you know, your money and his, like, both of y'all are trash. You know, money is money, and I'm willing to take all your money. You know what I mean? Like, Nan is pretty smart, because basically she knows both of them will run her company into the ground. Like, she knows Logan doesn't care, but then she doesn't really have much respect for Kendall and Shiv and Roman. And so she's like, you know what, both of y'all are going to run my company into the ground. I might as well just take the highest bidder. And the only person who saw that was Roman, right? He's like, okay, well, this was a waste of time. We should go. As they're having this conversation, right, you know, Kendall is pushing. He's like, you sure you don't want to hear our offer? And then suddenly Nan starts asking questions about financing. You know, she doesn't solicit a number. And she's so good, right? She talks about, oh, I don't like, this is disgusting. I'm selling this and that. Like, she's playing the woe is me card, right? And she's so smart. Like, she's like, so many offers, you know, 8, 9, what's next? And the fact that Roman sussed her out, what's next, like 9B, you know, she wants 10 billion. So Nan in this conversation basically recognized that they were desperate, and she tried to play on that desperation by basically soliciting an offer that is just well above our asking price, right? 10 billion? 10 billion, like, excuse me? but she senses that they're that dumb that they might just make her that offer. And you know, the whole time that Shiv, Kendall, and Roman are like outside her porch negotiating with their accountant or whoever was on the phone, like they're talking a big game, right? Like they're like, should we go 8, 8.5, 9? What do you think? And even their accountant or whoever they were talking to on the phone, he was just like I guess, like I don't, like what are y'all doing out there? And the way they're throwing these numbers around, it's as if they're shopping for a bag. You know, it's like, yeah, no issues. You know, like money to these kids is like an abstract. You know, it's not something real that has real consequences. And a lot of that has to do with their entitled upbringing, right? Whereas Logan uses money to progress forward, these kids, they just use money to get what they want because they want it, right? There's no logic behind it. It's like, why do you even want this company? Because your dad wants it? So it's just childish, you know, the way they were just throwing these numbers around, like, yeah, 8.5, 9. And Roman was like, what? Like, we're doing, like, the idea that you have to offer $10 billion to show that you're serious is preposterous. Like, this is like, I'm not even a business person, and I can tell that's just not something you do, right? Like, their offer basically ruined the game for everyone. And Roman says something interesting. He's like, are we really going to offer, like, we're buying a company to flip a company. So you need money left over to flip this company over, right? So they're buying it kind of as a starting point to build off of because they're too lazy and too, you know, dumb to come up with their own brand. So they're like, okay, we'll just take this and we'll flip it and we'll turn it into the most amazing media conglomerate, but to flip it, you need money. And Roman adds something interesting. He's like, why are we doing this when we can spend this money on sushi and snowmobiles? Like, why don't we just go enjoy our lives? Why are we doing all this again? And so this decision to buy this company, you know, again, money is an abstract concept. Like, they don't really see it as something ever to run out. But the way they're behaving, it could run out. You know, like, it doesn't occur to them that there's risk involved, right? And I think that just speaks to how terrible they are at business. The biggest mistake they did in offering this $10 billion is that they underestimate Logan quite a bit, right? They see him as someone that wants this company no matter what, but they don't see him as a businessman. You're like, yeah, he wants this company, but he's not about to offer $10 billion to get it. Like, he's not this stupid. So they just think, okay, we need to win. But at what cost? It's really embarrassing. Like, this whole time that they're at the Pierce family's home, it's really embarrassing because at one point Naomi comes out and she's like, she's basically soliciting a bigger offer, right? She's basically like, you need to do more, you know, like, you need to offer us everything you have. And it's such a joke, you know. It's like, at that point in time, they should understand, like, we're being played here. Instead, they're like, yeah, sure, we'll just empty our bank account and give you everything that we have. And, you know, the desperation is evident, right? Because Nat asked them a bunch of questions. And, you know, they were saying things without even thinking about it. Like, at one point, I think Shiv said, you know, I'm getting a divorce, so there won't be any contradictions. And you could see Kendall's face, Roman's face. He's like, you're getting a divorce? I thought y'all were separated. So even, like, Shiv's reaction to the Pierce family, like, they're so desperate to give them what they want to hear. And they're not thinking about the other side of it. It's like, you know, you're flipping a company that isn't doing that great. Like, what's their pitch? You know, as I mentioned earlier, I think the most embarrassing part, I mean, there's a lot of embarrassing parts. Like, these kids stay embarrassing each other. But the fact that they gave this woman what they wanted, this $10 billion, and she still was like, well, think about it. And then they went off to celebrate and act like it was a sure thing. I mean, they look like clowns. They look like clowns. Logan was, you know, pissed, and rightfully so. But watching them negotiate and poorly negotiate was just something else. I was like, you guys are idiots. Like, you don't understand things. Before I move to Logan, I just want to talk about Shiv and Tom in that final scene. So Shiv is feeling proud. She goes home. She's packing up her things. She's in a separation from Tom. And this scene was so anticlimactic. It's not what I was expecting at all. You know, I thought there was going to be explosive fireworks. I thought they were going to yell at each other. Instead, they were both so defeated and so sad and so run down. And, you know, everything about their relationship is transactional, right? Like, now that it's breaking apart, Shiv needs to figure out how she's going to survive for herself, or like how she's going to, you know, like, her purpose, essentially. She'll survive, but what's her purpose? And Tom is worried about like, damn, like, am I going to get kicked out of this family? So their transactional relationship has ended, right? Like Tom has picked a side, Shiv has picked a side. And the way they were talking, like Shiv didn't even want to hear it, right? Like they haven't talked about what happened in Italy. It seems like since the last season, they've just been separated. Like they just kind of decided to go just exist around each other, but not actually have any deep conversations. And I think Tom desperately wanted to fix it. You know, he even says, like, I felt bad for him. He's like, you don't even want to talk about this? And she was like, no, you betrayed me. And the way they were just lying on the bed, like totally defeated, they just seemed like two people who gave up. And I think this is one of my best scenes maybe in the whole series, because they were just so, it's not what you're expecting, right? It's just kind of an end. There's nothing they can say. You know, even Tom's like, do you want me to make love to you? It was just so unenthusiastic. Like, is there anything I can do? She's like, no. In fact, that's the least you could do. So it was a great scene, and I don't think it's the end of their story, but you just sense like there's no love there. You know, maybe they have love for each other, but they're done. Relationship-wise, it's really sad because sometimes I feel like they're very compatible and they do complement each other quite well. But because, you know, the situation with picking sides, it's, you know, it just, there's no way they can kind of come back from this. Okay, so now we move on to Logan's side, and watching them go back and forth was fantastic, right? Like totally different vibes. Like Logan in that negotiation scene, you know, just terrorizing everybody, his minions all dressed in black. They're in this very old, like they're just, everything is just cold and like, and Logan keeps saying he's surrounded by Munsters. And he keeps, you know, basically he's surrounded by moochers, people that are, they don't really care about him in any way, but that's what he wanted. You know, he made his bed and now he has to lie in it. And his kids are gone, but they're not forgotten. Like, I got the sense that he low-key missed them until he found out they were trying to take this deal. You know, he's like, damn, have you heard from the rats? Like, he was really hoping they would call. You know, I think he was kind of low-key thinking, maybe I should call them. Maybe they did move on. You know, maybe we can sort this out. But then once he found out about that deal, he was like, you raggedy kids, like I am done with all of y'all. And it seems like everyone around Logan is just interested in themselves. Like everyone has picked a side and they're trying to get what they can, you know, until the bitter end. And so this party was super interesting. And the lines, like I found myself laughing like hysterically, like starting with Connor. You know, like Connor is useless. You know, he's about to run himself into the ground. And I thought it was so funny that he was at 1% in the polling, and he is part of the 1%. And the way that he's spending money, like $100 million, like it's nothing. Like he's about to kick himself out of the 1%. Like that, like with Connor, Shiv, Roman, Kendall, like money is just like, it's like monopoly. It's not something that has consequences, but it seems Connor has spent so much that he's now feeling the consequences to the point where he's negotiating with his fiance, like maybe we need to have a cheaper wedding. And not because he's running out of money, but because he doesn't want to be a laughingstock if he goes under 1%. As if anybody's thinking about him. As if he matters to anyone. There's Greg. Like Greg, this episode was something else. The disgusting brothers, like excuse me? Like that girl he brought to the party, like Greg is trash. Like he's actually not of this world, right? Like he's kind of forced himself to be part of this world, but he's actually not part of this world. Like he brought his whole Tinder date to Logan's party. She's clearly not dressed for it. You know, when Tom started ripping her outfit apart with the bag, like I was dying. I was like, who am I to even judge this woman? But she was so out of place. Like Greg could have bought her a dress. He could have bought her an outfit, like made her look decent, right? Like Connor's girlfriend isn't of that world either, but she looks the part. He brought his whole raggedy Tinder date. She's taking selfies. She's walking around the house like it's a museum. You know, like, what did Logan's right hand say? This isn't a Shake Shack. You brought this Shake Shack to like, excuse me? And so his girlfriend was something else. Like, I was dying. And the fact that he actually had intimacy with her, not knowing that there were cameras everywhere. Like, at first I thought Tom was trolling him. You know, like telling him that to embarrass himself. And, you know, Greg is going through his bachelor phase, right? He's kind of enjoying his newfound power. You know, he's in the room now, right? He's seen by Logan now, right? And he's enjoying that. But the problem is, you know, every time he's seen not doing the right things, right? Like the fact that he actually told Logan, like, hey, I did this in your house. He is disgusting. You know, he's honestly disgusting. So Greg was just, and the way he just discarded his Tinder date, like, yeah, you handle it. You know, like telling the security guard to handle it. Like, I don't want to know what goes on in Get Mom. You know, like, I'm done with her. Like, Greg is just, he's adopted all the worst characteristics of this world. And I'm not sure how that's going to end for him. But I suspect not very well. So Logan is surrounded, you know, he gets to this point in his life where he knows that the people he's surrounded by have his back. Whether or not they want to have his back, we don't know. But he's kind of established himself as someone you don't want to F with. And yet he's so lonely, right? He's so lonely. Like, I thought it was funny. He was walking around this party as if he was a ghost. You know, and he actually at one point leaves the party. And no one notices that he's gone or that he came back. It didn't really matter if he was there or not, right? Like, he's not there anymore. His family's not with him. And a lot of that has to do with, you know, he did to himself, actually. And in one of the best scenes, I think, of the whole show, period, is when Logan, you know, goes out with his security guard. And this dinner scene at this diner, and he doesn't even know what to order, was so awkward, right? He calls his security guard his best friend. And this is such a cliche, right? Like these rich people who think they're drivers or they're security guards or they're pilots or like whatever. Like, yeah, we're friends. You know, like, I got you. I might be higher than you. I might control your pay, but like, you see me. Right? And he's asking all these rhetorical questions. He's not actually having a conversation with him because he doesn't really care about anything he has to say. And I think with Logan, he doesn't really have the language for relationships, right? So he's sitting there, he's asking all these rhetorical questions, and he's talking about people. You know, he's like, what are people? You know, they're economic units. You know, they're people with aims and values that operate in a marketplace. And as I'm listening to him describe people, like, what I understood is that he feels like he's someone, he's done everything right? He's married right. He kind of, in the business world, in society, he's moved in the right ways where he's able to like financially secure himself. Like, he's very good at what he does, but he doesn't really understand relationships. You know, he can't really control people the same way he can control business, right? Like, and I think that frustrates him, and he doesn't really know why that is. You know, and he's sitting there and he's describing people like, you know, in kind of the only language that he has available to him. And so he's very lonely. You know, he's very lonely. He's very sad. He doesn't have his kids. He doesn't have Marsha. He doesn't know what's waiting for him, right? And this question of like, what happens next? He knows he's getting old. You know, like the first season began with his birthday where he was supposed to pick a successor. And now that there are no successors left, I think he's wondering like, what happens next? You know, when he says, I have my suspicions, I think that was also one of the best lines, you know, like, I have my suspicions. Like, they're not gonna remember you. You know, I think that's his fear, right? To be totally forgotten. Like, he's just alone. You know, he's alone, he's sad. You know, in some ways he's gotten everything he's wanted, but not in the way that he would have liked maybe. And it's cost him everything. He refuses to call his kids. He's in a cold war with them. You know, this loneliness is so deep that I think had they not rivaled him for this company, he might have called his kids, right? Like, he's kind of in this cold war with them, but I think he was so sad and lonely that he was really thinking about it, right? Like, he kind of made steps to reach out to them until they pulled this on him. And I love that moment when he finds out that it's his kids that are the rival bidders. I love how Tom was like, everybody knows, right? Like, I think it dawns on Tom, like, damn, like, Shiv really figured me out. Like, Tom knows that the reason that they're bidding for this is because of him, but nobody else has clocked that yet. Not that Tom meant to do it, you know, on purpose, but that's essentially what got the ball rolling. And, you know, as soon as they realize this and while they're negotiating this deal, like, Logan already knows it's done, right? He's kind of coming up with rational numbers, right? 6, maximum 7 billion, but his raggedy kids are going to 10. And the contrast, right? Like, it's like their number is so preposterous. And I think that's why the Pierce family was like, we need to think about this, because do you even have that money to give us? And so Logan knew as soon as his kids were involved, like, it was a done deal, right? He was like, damn, like, they really messed up. They really messed this up for both of us, right? And this whole, like, call your wife and figure out what these people are doing, like, he's done with his kids, right? There's no bigger picture here, right? It's like you're all being played, and because they're so desperate, you know, like, they don't see it. And during this negotiation, I think Kendall's, like, the kids' accountant, the person they were talking to on the phone, basically told them that the value of this company is what the highest bidder is willing to pay, right? That's the value. And Logan was trying to set the tone for that, right? Like 6-7 billion, but these kids went so over that they actually ended up undervaluing themselves, right? Like, it's so clear that they just didn't know how to negotiate, that it messed up Logan's plans. And I don't think these kids know it, but it totally destroyed their future, right? It just kind of revealed to the Pierce family that they don't know what they're doing. So when Logan finally does call his kids, he's pissed, right? He's like, congratulations on, saying the highest numbers. Basically, he was like, y'all are children. You don't even have any concept of what you're saying, right? Like, not even making the best offer, right? Like, congratulations on saying the highest number. I hope that you have the funds to prove it, because I don't think you do. And hang up the phone. And the episode ends with Logan sitting alone in his apartment, watching his news channel. And he's so unimpressed by the anchor that he sees on screen, this old man who's a bit fat and, like, doesn't have the greatest haircut. And so he calls his executive and he says, have you lost it? Like, how could you put this man on screen? But really, he's losing it. And so watching Logan alone in his apartment, he's established himself. Right, like, he's back in New York. He's not going to be run out again. Like aesthetically, he's back to where he needs to be. Right, he's not in some, like last season where he's in the middle of nowhere thinking about fleeing to Saudi Arabia or wherever. Like, he's kind of made it, but he's alone. And it's like, at what cost? So I thought it was a great first episode. You guys let me know what you think, and until next time.